Indeed, God is present here and now, and in that awareness of God's presence, let us pray. Father, Mother, God, we are open and receptive to your divine guidance. In this moment, we release any cares that we have, and we open ourselves to your love. Feeling your love, unconditional, streaming through us. We open the faucet and allow it to move into this moment, unimpeded, free-flowing, unconditional, without allocation, without limitation. In the awareness of the healing power of your unconditional love, we give thanks. And so it is that together we say, Amen. Well, did you have a good Christmas? Are you having a happy New Year? So far? Yeah, well, we're 10 hours into it, so can't be all bad, right? So, letting go, letting God. We had an interesting Christmas in our household. I mean, it was, everybody that attended Christmas in our household lives in our household, so it wasn't that weather impeded us in any way, shape, or form. But as we're coming up to Christmas, Linda kept prodding me. What do you want for Christmas? What do you want for Christmas? And I said, I don't need anything for Christmas. I'm just good. So about a week prior to Christmas, she said, any fun thing that you'd like to do? And I said, well, maybe. And she said, well, what is it? What is it? I said, no, it's too much. Don't worry about it. And so she finally got me thinking, well, there is an opportunity for me to take advantage of her willingness to let me buy something that I'd really like to have. So, excuse me for just a moment. For those of you who don't know what this is, it's a spy machine. Yeah, no. It says specifically in the instructions, it says, do not fly it indoors. In fact, this drone is, there's 100 different manufacturers of drones now, right? And this particular one has quite a following. It's a popular drone. It has the controls are here. It has a camera on it, a high-resolution camera, and as I'm flying it, I get the live feed of the camera here on my cell phone, right? So I can fly according to what is showing here. However, it says keep the drone in sight because it will come to a point where the battery, the 23-minute flight time, but the battery will get to the point where you can't get it back, right? I mean, it goes so far that if you have, for instance, if you have downwind going that way and upwind going this way, you can't just fly it out for 11 and a half minutes and turn it around and fly it back for 11 and a half minutes because it may not get back. So they say keep it in sight. They say don't fly it indoors. It has a flight log that allows you that you can download from the chip on the device. It has GPS on it. It can track how fast it's moving and where it's been by GPS points. And in fact, you can buy software that allows you to set up a path for it to follow, not just in one plane, but you can specify at each waypoint what the elevation of the drone should be, so it'll fly accordingly. So anyway, Patrick reminded me of an old saying that the difference between men and boys is the price of their toys, right? So anyway, I took advantage of Linda's insistence that I buy something that I enjoy. And it was her insistence only that caused me to do this. So, interesting thing about this is that letting go and letting God, there's actually some software on this that will, once it loses signal, if it loses signal, it will automatically return to home and land where it took off from. And you can program it so that it will only go so far. In fact, I'm in beginner mode right now, which allows 100 feet ceiling and 100 feet radius of a cylinder. So it will only fly within this cylinder until I learn how to get better control of it. I was thinking about demonstrating it here because it does have an automatic takeoff that will cause it to come up and hover at about this height until you decide what you want to do with it. But no, I'm not going to do that. Well, so letting go and letting God is about attachments, right? It's about letting go of your attachments. And this is a perfect example. I can feel it already. I am very attached to this thing. And so part of the reason that I bought it was so that I could experiment, have a live experiment that I could relate to about letting go of attachments. And of course, I don't want it to fly to the point where it doesn't come back because, yeah, I am attached to it. But as we look at the letting go of attachments, as we look at our new year and consider the things in the past year that have brought us happiness and fulfillment, and the things that have diminished that or obstructed that in the last year, we have the perfect opportunity now to reconsider what it was that brought us happiness and do more of that this year, right? And to consider those things that obstructed our happiness and to not do that as often this year. So the opportunity for us then, as we come into this new year, is to realize that we do indeed have control of that. I mean, we may think, I have a question. Alex, did you have a question? What was your question? Shall we just break the, we don't need the burning bowl. We'll just say we're going to. Maybe, okay? Can't promise anything, but maybe. All right. So one of the things that in Unity that we appreciate about other traditions is that indeed every major tradition has something to offer us. In fact, Charles Fillmore, as he was in the process of trying to understand Myrtle Fillmore's recovery from tuberculosis through prayer, and the recovery was through prayer. What he was trying to do was to understand why that happened. So he did a study of the 7 great traditions and realized that there was a golden thread of truth that was common in all of those traditions. So he brought those ideas back, and he began then the development of the unity teachings, which we've come to know as the 5 principles of unity. So the things that we can draw from, for instance, the Buddhist tradition, is that we have the opportunity to determine our own happiness. And one of the fundamental teachings of Buddhism is that there are 4 noble truths. And those 4 noble truths are: life is dukkha, or the individual lives in a life that is off-centered, not centered, not solid, not confident, intolerant, lacking of confidence. Life is dukkha has several different interpretations. Dukkha has several different interpretations, but think of dukkha as off-centeredness, and you'll be pretty close. The cause of dukkha is tanha, and tanha is the selfish craving and attachment to outcome. Okay, so that's been a craving of mine, right? I'm back in the experiment mode. That has been a craving of mine actually since I heard about drones, and the hobby drones. I'm not too much of a fan of the military drones, but the hobby drones have been something that I've been interested in getting into. So Linda helped me satisfy my craving. Now, I need to recognize, as I enjoy that device, I need to recognize what it is that device represents to me. And if I find that my attachment to that causes me disappointment, for instance, the drone flies too close to a neighbor's house. And I saw a video of a fisherman on a pier that decided that the drone flying overhead was too much of a bother. So the fisherman took his casting line and he cast and snagged the drone and pulled it out of the air. So I need to be careful about my neighbors having too much of an attachment to their peace and quiet. So the cause of this off-centeredness is selfish cravings and attachment to outcome. So the solution is to, release those cravings and those attachments. Okay? Now, that's easier said than done, right? How many of you have had the experience of saying, oh, this attachment is causing me distress because it's causing me to have expectations, and the expectations are the basis of any grievance that I might have, and the grievance is really the experience of unhappiness, right? So, releasing cravings and attachments. There is a practice that we've talked about, but I'll remind you of it today, to allow that release. And the way to do that is by living the Eightfold Path according to the Buddhist tradition. And the Eightfold Path is intended to be to the community of Buddhist students. Okay? So the first and foremost aspect of the Eightfold Path is that you are in a community that shares the values, that shares the intentions that you have, because that community allows you to be encouraged to move forward even in light of the frustrations that may arise from the practice. But the Eightfold Path is right knowledge, being aware of the principles that rule your life and understanding the dynamics of that, right intent, right speech, not taking, not being aggressive in your speech, not using words that would harm someone else or yourself, right conduct, being willing to conduct your affairs with others and with yourself in such a way that there is no harm that is brought to you or them. Right livelihood, to engage that profession or that career or that job, if it's just a job, that brings positive outcome to your community. And then these last three are related specifically to the practice of meditation, and that is right effort, to be joyful in the practice of meditation, to allow yourself to not be frustrated by how hard it can be sometimes to enter into that space and to stay in that space, and to sit down on a regular basis and have your meditation, right mindfulness, and right concentration. So this is the Eightfold Path. Now, you'll notice that with right association, which is an important part of that, it's really a ninefold path, but because these 8 principles were being conveyed to the community that was already in place, it is not considered one of the 8. Commentators and students of this concept regard the success as being measured by whether or not you're happy, whether or not you're compassionate, whether or not you are in that state of love that you have, that you experience, that you express love, and that you are joyful in your practice. Okay? So those are the measures of success of this basic teaching of the Buddha. Now, as we look at this teaching, and we say, well, okay, if Fillmore were looking at this, how would Fillmore relate this to the Christian tradition? It turns out that there's plenty of opportunity in our scripture to recognize these same principles. At the end of the first century, there were a number of different communities that were following different teachers. And those teachers were disciples of teachers who were the associates of Jesus. So we're talking about end of first century, some 70 years, which would be about 3 generations at that time, 3 generations removed from the execution of Jesus. So these schools sprang up, and out of these schools came different interpretations of the recorded teachings of Jesus. And these different interpretations became schools. For instance, the Janine school was the community that arose around, it's believed, not thoroughly proved, but believed to have arisen around the writer of the book of John. Now, the writer of the book of John wrote that near the end of the first century. And in that community, there was a separate set of beliefs that were related to whether or not Jesus was actually a human expressing God, or God expressing as a human. Okay? So there was this schism that arose in the Johannine community of those that felt that Jesus was totally divine, that there was no human aspect to it, and that the death of Jesus and the sacrifice of Jesus' life was irrelevant in terms of the study of his teachings. Then the other part of this community felt that, oh no, his humanity was very important because in his expression of his humanity, his death became the ultimate sacrifice, right? And it was the proof of Jesus' divinity that he was willing to die without any resistance. Okay, so these were the two aspects of this community that, in fact, created a schism, and that schism caused those who believed in the divinity, the 100% divinity of Jesus, or predominantly divinity of Jesus, to leave the community. And out of that came the writing of the books of 1 John, 2 John, and 3 John. These letters that were written to the community, the Johannine community that believed in the humanity of Jesus and the ultimate sacrifice of his crucifixion, brought us these books, or the 1 John, 2 John, and 3 John, the letters of John. So out of the 1 John chapter 2, verses 15 and 16 came this: do not love the world or the things in the world. The love of the Father is not in those who love the world. For all that is in the world, the desire of the flesh, the desire of the eyes, the pride in riches, comes not from the Father, but from the world. So as we hear this saying, be in the world, but not of the world, what that is saying is that while you are in this experience of the world, do not become attached, do not have these selfish cravings that are of significant impact on your happiness. The important thing is to remain centered in God, not of the world. Does that make sense? So this being centered in God is an expression of do not be attached to the things of the world. Specifically, don't be attached to drones. Don't be attached to fast cars. Don't be attached to beautiful women. I mean, you can be attached to beautiful women, but that's another question. But do not allow these attachments to cause you unhappiness. Because if you have the attachment, if you have the attachment to outcome, or you have the attachment to the presence of the drone, that it always comes back to me, please, that if you have that attachment, then when it doesn't happen, what happens? Disappointment, unhappiness. And it is in the fulfillment of our relationship with God that attachments actually get in the way. Do you see that? So we have these things called relationships. And there are attachments that we have to other people, right? Now, if we have, this is a hard part of this teaching, okay? So let's just go into it realizing this is a hard part of this teaching. That if we have a greater attachment here than over here, then this is an obstruction to our realizing God. That is, making God real in our experience. Because, remember the two great commandments? Love God with all your heart. Love your neighbor as yourself. Right? Love God with all your heart. Love God. Not just God, but God. Right? Love God with all your heart. And part of that, it's as if this is a subnote of love God with all your heart. Love your neighbor as yourself. Because your neighbor is also, as you are, part of God, right? So perhaps the two great commandments could be, in an executive summary, expressed: love God. Love God unconditionally. Love all that is and all that isn't, all that was and all that wasn't, all that will be and all that won't be. Love creation in its entirety without exception. And in that, then, we consider this relationship versus that relationship. While we may have intimate relations with this relationship, we may not have intimate relations with this relationship. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't love all unconditionally. Now, if we love all unconditionally, what happens? When the drone doesn't return, my concern is not about my not having the drone, but hoping that whoever found the drone is able to make use of it, right? Having that kind of detachment to realize that the conditions that I am faced with are part of the conditions that others are faced with. That we are an interconnected web of relationships and conditions, and that the relationships are what is most important. Love God with all your heart. And whether or not the drone returns is of little importance, right? Love God with all your heart. And in that loving God with all your heart, you are now in the world, but not of the world. The conditions of the world, the aspects of the world, that is irrelevant. The relationships are most important. Love your neighbor as yourself. Because in reality, your neighbor is yourself. So as we look at our experience, and as we consider the things that have gone on this last year that were an obstruction to our realizing God, it is important to realize we can let those things go. Course in Miracles in Lesson 63 offers us this. The light of the world brings peace to every mind through my forgiveness. The light of the world brings peace of mind through my forgiveness. What does my forgiveness have to do with the others in the world? Well, it's part of the releasing of attachments. Remember, I've talked about when you give love to the moment, when you give love unconditionally to the moment, what happens is that your expectations are dissolved because the realization of love in this moment is of such an extraordinary realization. Unconditional love in this moment, not allocated, not specified here and not specified there, but unconditional love. When you realize that unconditional love, the minor things that expectations bring you are overwhelmed by this glorious light that you are bringing to your experience. This glorious light. Glory, in its original definition, was about light. It was about the emanation of light. And so when we are glorified, we are the expressions of light. Okay? How holy are you who have the power to bring peace to every mind? How blessed are you who can learn to recognize the means for letting this be done through you? What purpose could you have that would bring you greater happiness? You are indeed the light of the world with such a function. The Son of God looks to you for his redemption. It is yours to give him, for it belongs to you. Accept no trivial purpose or meaningless desire in its place, or you will forget your function and leave the Son of God in hell. The reference in A Course in Miracles to the Son of God is talking about that whole sonship that we are all a part of. That each and every one of us is part of this expression of the Son of God, the Christ, right? We're all harbors of the Christ. Accept no trivial purpose or meaningless desire in its place, or you will forget your function and leave the Son of God in hell. This is no idle request that is being asked of you. You are being asked to accept salvation that it may be yours to give. And as you give salvation, so you are saved. That's the concept. Let go of the old Christian salvation, accepting Jesus as the one Son of God. That actually is a false teaching. The true teaching is accept yourself as the one Son of God. Accept yourself as the one Son of God and express that truth to be the light of the world. I am the light of the world. You people come and follow me. Don't follow me as David, but rather follow me as the light, right? And realize that the light is in you. Follow your light. Express that unconditional love into the moment and step into the glory of that moment that is illuminated by that light that shines through you. Does that make sense? It is simple, but it's not easy. Why? Because of the attachments that we have to things of the world. So in our burning bowl, I'd like you to think during our meditation, I'd like you to consider those things that are the attachments that have obstructed your realization of God. Now, it's not necessary to list them all, okay? In fact, if you could pass out those, this is just a little piece of paper, right? But just note on there the reminders of those obstructions, those attachments. And we're going to let go of those attachments. So as we come into this meditation, let us come in with I cast all my cares. So in this cleansing meditation, let us recognize that these things that come up here in the next few minutes are not things that we need to be attached to. But in our consideration, in our discovery of those attachments, consider the major disappointments that you've had in this last year. What have been the things that have caused you distress, anger, discomfort? Bring a few of the salient memories to mind. And then as part of this process, look at, for each of these incidents, events, look at the expectations that were not met that caused your distress. What were the expectations that were not fulfilled? And then behind the expectations, underneath the expectations, the foundation of those expectations are the attachments. And it's the attachments that we're looking for. What are the attachments? Oftentimes the attachments are related to something that is not fulfilled in me, that I am searching for something out there that's going to fill the gap that I sense in here. And while that may be a common theme, that may be a common intention, it never works. So look at the attachments that you're trying to use to fill that perceived gap in here. And make note of those. It doesn't have to be a long explanation, just a word or two to remind you. As we come back into this time and space, recognize that those attachments are of your own choosing. You can let those go. And as you are ready, come on up. Maybe we do this row by row to prevent any traffic jam, but come down this aisle and go out that aisle. And so why don't you all on this side come on down and zoom. Yeah, don't linger over the fire. All right. Isn't this fun? Yeah. 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 And as you see that go up in flame, recognize that that is it. It's done. All right. Whoa. Now with care. Okay. All right. There he goes. Can I move that on in? If only you'd known all along that it was this easy. Boom. Ooh. So it is. Oh, wait a minute. We're not done yet, are we? Oh, man. It's there. You were following directions. Yeah. You all don't have any paper. Would you like some paper? You did yours. You guys? Very good. All right. Well done. Yeah. That'll be in next week's talk, how to do that. So there it is. This is your opportunity to let it go. Do you feel like you've let it go? Okay? Now, there may be an opportunity for you to come back and say, oh, I really like that attachment. I'm going to do that again because it's so much fun being irritated. It's so much fun being in fear. It's so much fun having these aggravations. It gives me some challenge. Well, that's your choice, right? But it's also your choice to let it go. Let's do Hallelujah. Let's sing Hallelujah.